All right, so get this. Google is going nuclear to power its AI ambitions.
Yeah, I saw that too. Pretty wild, right? We've got like articles from everywhere on this, tech journals, energy experts, even Google themselves put out a blog post.
Seriously,
Yeah.
not what comes to mind when you think of Google, right? But yeah, they're partnering up with a company called Kairos Power.
To get a whole bunch of energy, like up to 500 megawatts
Mm.
from those small modular reactors,
Yeah.
everyone's talking about SMRs by 2035.
So this isn't just like a little side project for them, right? This
Uh,
is a big deal. It's the first time a company this big has gone all in on nuclear for AI.
exactly.
Yeah,
Makes you wonder if this is the beginning of a trend. Like, are all the other tech giants going to follow suit?
totally. So let's get into it. What does this actually mean for Google, for AI, for clean energy in general?
Well, we got to understand why Google's doing this in the first place.
Right.
They've been pouring money into renewables, solar wind power, all that.
Yeah, Google's like a poster child for clean energy, so why go nuclear all of a sudden?
Well, here's the thing about renewables, as great as they are. They're not always there when you need them.
Right.
Sun goes down, wind stops blowing.
Ah, I see. So for something like AI that has to run 24/7, just relying on solar and wind isn't going to cut it.
Nope. Not reliable enough. Those data centers that run all Google's AI, they need a constant flow of power. And nuclear can do that. It's always on.
So it's like a giant backup generator.
Kind of.
Yeah.
You can think of it like that renewables are there when the sun's out, wind's blowing, but nuclear is the steady eddy. It's always there to keep things running.
Okay, so constant power, that makes sense. But why nuclear specifically? I mean, when I hear nuclear, I think cooling towers danger, you know?
Yeah, I get it. It's got a bit of a reputation.
Yeah.
But that's where these SMRs come in. They're not your grandpa's nuclear plant.
Okay, so how are they different?
Well, for one thing, they're way smaller, hence the whole small modular thing.
Yeah.
And that smaller size actually makes them safer. Plus, they're designed to be built in factories and shipped out, which makes the whole construction process more efficient and hopefully cheaper.
Wait, you can build a nuclear reactor in a factory? That sounds insane.
Right, like something out of the
Okay,
future.
yeah.
But that's the point. They're supposed to be easier to build, less risky than those giant traditional plants.
Okay, so smaller, safer. What about the other big issue with nuclear? The waste. It's a problem, right?
Yeah, nuclear waste is definitely a serious thing.
Yeah.
Got to deal with it carefully. But there's some really interesting stuff happening in that area.
Like what?
Well, scientists are working on these advanced recycling technologies that can make the waste way less radioactive, and there'd be less of it too.
Okay, less waste and it's less dangerous. That sounds good. But hasn't nuclear power always been super expensive?
Well, the big traditional plants, yeah, they cost a fortune. But these SMRs are supposed to be way cheaper because they're modular and the designs are more streamlined. So cheaper to build and cheaper to run.
So smaller, safer, potentially cheaper, and less waste. So why hasn't anyone done this before? Why is Google the first one going all in on nuclear like this?
That is the million-dollar question. And it leads us to some even more interesting stuff.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Because this isn't just about Google needing reliable power. There's a lot more going on here. Geopolitics, economic stuff that could change the whole energy game.
Hold on, gotta grab my notes. This is getting good.
Think about it. Google's making themselves independent, right? The world's going green, renewable energy. But a lot of those sources, it all depends on where you are, what the weather's doing.
So they're like an island.
Yeah.
Then, right, their own energy source.
Yeah.
Not at the mercy of the global market or whatever.
Exactly. It's a smart move strategically, especially with all the craziness happening with energy supplies globally. It's like they're thinking 10 steps ahead.
It's like they're playing chess.
Yeah.
And everyone else is playing checkers.
Right. And there's the money side of it too, nuclear power. Yeah, it's expensive to get started. But long term, it can save you a ton of money, especially for a company like Google. They use a crazy amount of energy.
So they're in it for the long haul. This nuclear thing, it's a big bet, but it could pay off big time.
Yep. And don't forget the environmental angle, nuclear power. When it's done right, it's zero emissions. It could be a huge part of getting off fossil fuels, fighting climate change.
Okay, so strategic independence, economic benefits, good for the environment. It's all starting to make sense. But is Google the only one thinking about this? Other tech companies must be facing the same energy problems, right?
Oh, absolutely. Google's just the first one to make a big splash.
Yeah.
Other companies are definitely paying attention, like Microsoft. They're already using power from 3 Mile Island.
Wait, seriously, 3 Mile Island? That 3 Mile Island, the one with the accident?
Yep, that 3 Mile Island. It's a pretty big sign that people are starting to think differently about nuclear power, even in places where there have been problems.
That's wild. It sounds like the whole tech industry is starting to warm up to the idea of nuclear.
It seems that way.
Hmm.
And it's not just Microsoft.
Yeah.
Amazon's building a massive data center right next door to a nuclear plant in Pennsylvania.
Seriously, how much are they spending on that?
Over $650 million. That's how serious they are about it.
Wow, so they're all in too. What about other companies? Anyone else jumping on the nuclear bandwagon?
Oh, yeah, Oracle's thinking about putting SMRs directly into their data
But
centers.
hold on, built-in nuclear reactors? That sounds like science fiction.
I know, right? But it makes sense. If you're using that much power, why not have your own clean energy source right there? It's not just about Google going nuclear. It's about a whole new way of thinking about power, especially for the digital world.
Okay, I'm starting to get the big picture. But let's be real for a sec. Nuclear power still has a pretty bad image. Chernobyl, Fukushima. Those were huge disasters.
You're right. Those were terrible events. And they definitely shaped how people think about nuclear.
Hmm.
But it's important to remember, these SMRs are designed with safety as the top priority.
So you're saying these SMRs are safer than the plants that caused those disasters. How can you be sure?
Well, for one thing, their size. The smaller they are, the less damage they can do if something goes wrong.
Right.
And the technology itself. It's come a long way since Chernobyl, Fukushima.
I don't know. I'm still a little freaked out by the whole meltdown thing. What about radiation leaks?
I get it. But remember we were talking about those molten salt coolants
Mm-hmm.
and the pebble bed fuel? Those are key for safety. The molten salt's like a natural heat sink. And the pebbles, they make the reactor more stable. It's way harder for things to go wrong.
Yeah.
And they've got all these high-tech control systems and safety mechanisms. Meltdowns and leaks are way less likely.
Okay, that does sound a lot safer. But what about the waste? That stuff's dangerous, and it sticks around for a long, long time.
You're not wrong. Nuclear waste is a serious issue. We can't just sweep it under the rug. But scientists are making real progress with recycling technologies.
So less waste, and it's less dangerous. Too good to be true.
Well, it's still early days,
Yeah.
but the potential is there. And even if we solve the safety and waste issues, isn't nuclear power still ridiculously expensive? That's what people think. But those old-school nuclear plants, yeah, they cost a fortune. These SMRs, though, they're designed to be way cheaper. They're modular, so they're faster and easier to build. And they should be cheaper to run, too.
So cheaper, safer, cleaner than the old nuclear plants. It's starting to sound pretty good.
It's promising. There's no doubt about that. But SMRs are still a new technology. There are still things we don't know, and challenges to overcome.
Like what?
Well, public perception, for one thing. A lot of people are still scared of nuclear power, and that's understandable. It's going to take time and transparency to win people over.
Yeah, those disasters really left a mark.
They did. And then there's all the regulations, getting permission to build and operate a nuclear facility. It's a long and complicated process.
So it's not a slam dunk. There's still work to do.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to talk about all of this. It's not a simple issue.
It feels like we're at a crossroads. We've got this amazing opportunity for clean energy, but there's still so much fear and uncertainty around nuclear power.
That's a really good way to put it. We have to acknowledge both sides of the story.
So where do we go from here? Google's going nuclear. Other tech giants are following suit. Is this the future of energy?
It could be. The demand for clean energy is only going to go up, especially with AI getting bigger and bigger, nuclear power, especially these SMRs. It's one possible solution, but it comes with risks and challenges.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. We need to weigh the benefits against the risks. It's not a decision to take lightly.
This whole thing is fascinating. It's not just about the technology, it's about the future of energy, the role of AI in the world.
Exactly. And it's a conversation that's just getting started.
Well, you've definitely given us a lot to think about, so what do you think? Is nuclear the answer, or are the risks just too big? That's a tough question.
It is. It's a decision that needs careful thought. We have to weigh the potential good against the potential bad.
That's what makes this so interesting. It's not black and white. It's complicated.
Absolutely.
Well,
And that's why we need to keep talking about it.
we'll leave our listeners with that thought. Thanks for joining us on this nuclear power deep dive. Be sure to check out the links in the show notes. For more info on this developing story, it's a lot to process, right? Google going nuclear, all these other companies jumping on board. It feels like we're on the cusp of something huge.
It does, doesn't it?
Mhm.
I mean, for me, the thing that really stands out is how all these different things are coming together at once. You've got AI exploding, the need for clean energy, and now these new nuclear technologies that could change everything. It's like all the pieces are falling into place.
Yeah, it's like a whole new era of energy is starting. And it makes you wonder what it means for regular people. Like, are we all going to have mini nuclear reactors in our basements someday?
Huh. That's a good question.
Hmm.
And it's something that a lot of smart people are thinking about right now. Scientists, engineers, policymakers. I don't know about personal reactors just yet, but I think we're going to see the impact of this shift pretty soon.
Really?
Yeah.
Like how?
Well, if these SMRs work the way they say they do, they could really change how we get energy, especially in parts of the world that don't have reliable power grids. Imagine bringing clean energy to remote communities, places that have never had a stable energy source.
Wow, that would be amazing. A real game changer.
Exactly. And then you think about the bigger picture. If enough countries switch to nuclear, we could really start moving away from fossil fuels for good.
Hmm.
Imagine a world with clean energy for everyone.
That sounds pretty incredible, but will it actually happen? Or is this just another one of those things that sounds great but never really takes off?
That's the big question, isn't it? Only time will tell. But I think Google making this move, it's a sign that things are changing.
Yeah.
It's a sign that people are serious about clean energy.
Mm.
And the future of energy might be way different than what we thought it would be.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to think about. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. But one thing's for sure, this whole conversation about nuclear, it's back. And it's more important than ever.
That's for sure. We'll leave our listeners with that thought. If Google's right about nuclear, what kind of world will that create? A world powered by AI and clean energy. It's exciting and maybe a little bit scary too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of energy. We'll be back next time with another fascinating look at the ideas shaping our world.